concurrently, in 2016, we had diplomats in Havana, Cuba, who started complaining about this exact same phenomenon. Is that people have lost their lives over this. This phenomenon is happening and it's real, and it's taking out the best of our best in the CIA, FBI, and is now happening to congressional members. Hey, we're going to be holding this meeting, and if you have these symptoms, we want to talk to you. And I expect maybe a handful of people would have showed up, but 100 people showed up. They can manipulate thought processes. They can imprint memory sets and erase memory sets. And that is what's happening. It's real. It's not a conspiracy. It's not a tinfoil hat phenomenon. It's conspiracy fact.
Hey everyone, Billy Carson, aka Forbidden Knowledge. Have you ever wondered about people hearing voices in their heads? Have you ever wondered why some people might be taking direction from something that they don't even know where it's coming from and going and doing egregious acts against humanity? Today we have an expert in anomalous health incidents. We have Jesse Beltran. He's going to talk about this today. What's up, Jesse? How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Pleasure and an honor to be here in studio with you.
Yeah, listen, I'm honored to have you here because this topic that we just kind of off camera talked about a little bit, believe it or not, it's a topic I talked about probably about 8 years ago because there was a conspiracy, you know, as there are. I'm a conspiracy realist that did talk about the fact that there could be some technology that can send frequencies into people and make them hear voices and even command them to do things against their will. So before we get started on all that crazy stuff, tell the people who you are, where you're from, how you got into this.
Okay. Well, my name is Jesse Beltran, and I'm originally from Sacramento, California. I'm a retired firefighter paramedic from the City of Sacramento Fire Department. And after I retired from the fire department, I became the president of an organization called the International Center Against the Abuse of Covert Technologies. And we'll talk a little bit about how that formed. But my background is primarily in pre-hospital emergency medicine. I was a proprietary programmer. We were the first institute to direct line-of-sight microwave technology in the city of Sacramento before high-speed data, the internet came to fruition. I'm also currently the president of an organization called Cosmic Clarity Connections. Our brand is Mind Nexus Live, and what we do is we basically educate people about science and spirituality regarding this phenomenon, and it's taken me across the world, and I'm an advocate for transparency in human rights and medical experimentation, and that's really what brought me into this. How it all started is back in early 2010, I met a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Hall in Austin, Texas, and his fiance started experiencing some weird phenomenon, strange auditory symptoms followed by short-term, long-term memory loss, electrical reverberations throughout the body. And concurrently, in 2016, we had diplomats in Havana, Cuba, who started complaining about this exact same phenomenon. Strange sounds being transmitted to their heads, followed by vertigo, nausea, vomiting, severe head pain, short-term, long-term memory loss, reverberations through the body, and ultimately they were discredited by our government initially, And it wasn't taken seriously until our Canadian diplomats started having the same complaints. Now, Congress held a hearing where a gentleman by the name of, and he's retired, Lieutenant Colonel Greg Egrin, testified in front of our congressional members that this phenomenon is happening and it's real, and it's taking out the best of our best in the CIA, FBI, and is now happening to congressional members. They acknowledged that it is real, and they put aside funding to help only federal employees because they're saying that it only exists for federal employees. But myself and Dr. Hall had been covering this topic since 2010, where this was happening to U.S. civilians. Okay. And so when I met Dr. Hall, I said, well, what is being done? And he said what he was doing is he was doing radio frequency testing, because our hypothesis was, if this truly is a signal and it's not some conspiracy or some type of psychological symptom, that we should be able to measure it. And so what he was using is a little frequency detection device, which was called the JM20 Pro. Also, that's what a famous private investigator by the name of Melinda Kidder, who was involved in the Iran-Contra scandals, and she would do investigations with regards to this phenomenon. So he was coming up with positive findings. And so I said, well, if you're coming up with positive findings, why isn't anything being done about it? Why can't you take that information to the doctors or general practitioners and getting further studies to help these individuals who are suffering from this? And by the way, they are truly suffering. They are being tortured 24/7, 365 days a year. So much so that as I've been covering this over the last 20 years, is that people have lost their lives over this. We now have confirmation of 25 individuals who have committed suicide from this because there are no resources to the civilian population. But what I propose to Dr. Hall is that well, he says, when they go see their general practitioners and they express their symptoms, they're being railroaded into the mental health industry, force institutionalized, force medicated. And my position on this is that they were just being further victimized. And so I said, well, there's got to be a way to take this subject complaints and turn it into objective data. So what I decided to do back in 2010 is call a meeting in Sacramento, California, and said, hey, we sent out flyers and disseminated, hey, we're going to be holding this meeting, and if you have these symptoms, we want to talk to you. And I expect maybe a handful of people would have showed up, but 100 people showed up. And they all had the exact same complaints with very little deviation. And so I said, well, there's definitely something here. So now what we decided to do is do a mass RF testing followed by surveys so we can get the data to see if there's any correlation, who had the preponderance to have these symptoms and why were they being chosen. And so we decided to do RF scanning in Davis, California, at the university there, and 300 people showed up. And when that happened, I said, we've got something, okay? What the preliminary data started to show is that the people who are most likely to be affected by this back then were Caucasian females who were highly educated, recently single, widowed, or divorced, and then Caucasian males, then African-American females, African-American males, Asians, and it dwindled down from there in ethnicity. And that remained consistent into the Midwest until we got to Chicago. And then the Caucasian criteria and African-American criteria flipped, where it was predominantly African-American females who were highly educated, recently single, widowed, or divorced, then African-American males, and then Caucasian, and followed the same subsets all the way to the East Coast, except for one anomaly, which was up in Virginia, where a group of military subcontractors had asked me to come do the RF testing there. And it was there that I decided to do something a little bit different. By the way, I forgot to mention, I am a certified master hypnotherapist. And so I was noticing a phenomenon that those who were most affected in a very negative way, we're talking about doctors, lawyers, judges, who were losing millions-dollar businesses because they were following traditional medicine and being railroaded and say, you can't touch a patient. You have a mental disorder and you're a liability. And so what we decided to do is continue to do the study, and what we were finding is that depending on your suggestibility, that if you had the right suggestibility type and this phenomenon was happening to you, you could essentially get them to do almost anything, things that they wouldn't morally do in a normal environment. What this ended up doing is bringing me to Europe, where a governmental agency asked me to come test their diplomats. And they wanted me to bring any American citizens or any of my clients over who I felt very strongly that they were being affected with this technology, to utilize a research institution there. And it was called an anechoic chamber. And this anechoic chamber was designed to block out frequency spectrums between 8 kilohertz and 19 gigahertz. So that was well up outside the range of what we were detecting on these individuals when we were scanning them. And by the way, when we scanned them, it wasn't random where they were coming up positive. They are coming up positive at very specific focal areas around the human body. And depending on how you light up, as far as positivity, I could tell you that there were very identifiable patterns. For example, if you were incarcerated, you would light up in the same way. We could superimpose each of those studies over each other, and they were identical. If you were in the military, we could do the same thing, superimpose those tests, and they were identical.
So this seemed like different frequencies. It's a frequency all the same, but slight variations of the frequency, which then hit the body and activate the body in different ways.
Correct. And we'll dig a little deeper into that. And then there was the general population. So back in 2010, I really think we were in the experimental phase of whatever this phenomenon was. But when we got to Europe and we were able to test individuals, and we'll show you that video so you can show your listeners. We took control groups, so people from the embassy over there, put them in the anechoic chamber, tested them with our equipment. I'll show you what we're using so it's a little bit clearer. So back then, so this is the JM20 Pro.
Got an antenna for that?
Yep. And it's a general frequency detector, okay? It'll pick up positive frequencies if there's any emission. And you can attenuate it down to where you only need to be within a millimeter or two of that emission. And that's what was really unique about this particular device, because it allowed us to do mass testing in an open environment, which is not controlled, like the anechoic chamber, which is much different. And then we would come back with a general frequency.
You can scan for bugs with those, right?
Correct. And this would test for numerical frequencies. Whenever we detected it, then we would go and get a reading. So in that anechoic chamber, we took the control groups and we tested them. And what was, for the first time, our frequency counter read 0. So we knew we were in the correct environment, and we were very excited about that. And then we brought in those who tested positive in our preliminary RF scans and brought them in the anechoic chamber concurrently with the control. And we would test the person who came up positive in that, and then we would get frequency detections. It was at that point we said, well, our hypothesis was there's got to be a reason why that signal is following them. There has to be something unique about them. And so it was at that point that we could say, for whatever reason, we didn't know what at that time, that they were coming up positive for a frequency emission, and it had to be something emitting from their body, their person. And ultimately, the end result is that we were then surgically removing biosensors. There were foreign bodies at first because you can't call them anything until you get them identified in a lab. And what the results were is that these things were approaching, were micron size at that point, but then approaching nano. And so we have all the images, all the studies that we can share, and you can see what these things look like. So the history of implantation is not anything new. Back in the 40s, the United States government had been doing it to their soldiers, where it was a large grain of rice type RFID chip. And then in the 70s and 80s, it became a small grain of rice. In the 80s, things changed. It became down to the size of a letter on a penny.
Wow.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, after that jab, we started doing RF testing again because there was this huge spike in complaints of people experiencing this.
Yeah.
And so we were really curious, why is that happening? So back then, on average, an individual would come up positive at 8, maybe 10 locations on the high. Now, on average, it's about 12 to 13, as high as 19 locations. And what is different now is that not only did the numbers spike in the locations that were coming up positive, but we are now getting children that are coming up positive. And
dead giveaway.
Back then, children with only a couple cases that I can recall were always negative. And so our hypothesis is that this has to do with that jab.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about nanotech, we have studies that we're now going out and we're educating the public about that show in the mRNA vaccine, the Pfizer and Moderna specifically, there is this nanotech in there. Yeah. Now, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ido Bachelet in 2013 gave a TED-Med talk, and anyone can research this, pull it up on YouTube. Yeah. And he just came from his lab in front of the audience, and he's holding up a 1cc syringe. And he says at the tip of this needle is 1,000 billion robots.
Wow.
And that's verbatim. And he said, and he in his dissertation, he also talks about why this is a good thing for humanity, because they are controlled by RF emissions. He even teaches his students how to control these nanorobots with your joystick off of your Xbox.
Wow.
So once they're in a host, you can maneuver these things to do whatever you want. They're self-assembling, they're self-replicating.
Crazy.
And they carry payloads, so you can release a payload for whatever specific agenda that you have. And that goes into, so what is the agenda? Okay.
Yeah.
We have, through FOIA requests, we have a report. It's called the New World Vistas report, and it was put together by the greatest minds of our military, specifically the Air Force. And it was released in November of 1994. Okay. And on page 89 of that report is titled Biological Processes. And in that, it specifically talks about utilizing directed energy weapons, RF emissions, to basically manipulate the human body. And this is where it gets really interesting. The language specifically says they can manipulate thought processes. They can imprint memory sets and erase memory sets. And you've probably heard during the Middle East, when we were over there fighting those wars, our enemies were giving up in droves. And what they were utilizing was the voice of God weapon. They were transmitting the voice of Allah. Telling them to give up.
They were.
Yeah. And they gave up in droves. Yeah. Well, this is the same mechanism that is being utilized. Where do we go from here? Yeah. We can even go back a little bit further. There is another report that was issued by our United States Congress, and it's called the Committee on the Judiciary, United States Senate, 93rd Congress. It's the second session, November of 1974, and it's titled Individual Rights and the Federal Role in Behavior Modification. So this is in the 70s, and they were experimenting on prisoners. And unfortunately, we have a history of doing this, not only to our prisoners, but the mentally ill. They've been used as lab rats for non-consensual experimentation throughout history. We can talk about the Tuskegee experiments when they were infecting the African American males with syphilis.
Yeah,
and
just let and see what happens.
Yeah, just letting it go rampant. Even though we had penicillin, we had a cure.
Yeah,
people died.
Yeah.
People were disfigured, dismembered,
yeah,
and never had any compensation or remedies.
Just an apology from Bill Clinton many, many years later.
Yes,
that was about it.
Yeah, they got
did nothing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
yeah, and in this report back in the 70s, not only does it say that they were doing using RF technology, remote technology, to get real-time biometric data, but it also says they were able to manipulate and read thoughts. So that was even in the 70s.
Wow.
Now I'm going to share something with the public. What if, how many out there have someone that they know in their family or know of someone who has mental illness? And the question I pose, what if it's synthetically induced? Okay. And where do we go? Is that possible? And the bottom line is it's yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a gentleman by the name of Aaron Alexis. He was a soldier for the U.S. military. He called me one day, and he was expressing to me that he was having these exact symptoms. And he says, "Hey, I hear that you can help me with this."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I can help you get data to prove that this phenomenon is happening to you, if it indeed is happening to you." So he complained of the exact same symptoms that our diplomats complained of. He complained of the exact same symptoms that my clients here that are U.S. citizens were complaining of. And what initially happens when you experience this phenomenon is that you're either in a state of fight or flight. He was a soldier, so he was programmed to fight. And what he did is he went to the Navy Yard here on the East Coast and he killed 12 people. And at the butt of his rifle, he inscribed the initials EMP.
Wow.
Electromagnetic pulse. Okay. I can tell you with great confidence that I believe that he was a victim to this. You have a case here in Florida. He was a African-American attorney, and his name was Myron May. And Myron May called me complaining of the exact same thing as Aaron Alexis. And again, I expressed, look, I can help you, but this is a long journey. It's not something that's a quick fix. And he says, I ain't got time for this. I got bigger fish to fry. I thought he was talking about creating a lawsuit and going after someone.
Yeah.
But he went to the University of Florida and killed 3 people in the research department.
Wow.
Because he thought it was coming from there.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is if we know that the technology exists, that they can imprint memory sets, erase memory sets, then they can synthetically induce mental illness.
Yeah.
And that is what's happening. It's real. It's not a conspiracy. It's not a tinfoil hat phenomenon. It's conspiracy fact, which is a crime.
Watch this video for free at www.4bk.tv or download the app on your smartphone, Fire Stick app, Samsung TV, Roku, and other app providers.